The Manhattan Cafe gleamed with crystal chandeliers as Isabella Sterling swept past Ethan Carter's outstretched hand, refusing his greeting entirely. She settled into her chair, designer heels clicking dismissively against marble floors. Her gaze swept over him, the simple shirt, the calloused hands, the faint oil stain on his cuff. "So you're Ethan," she said, voice dripping with disdain. "Just a mechanic?" The word hung between them like an insult, sharp and deliberate. She had no idea that in 30 minutes, this man she dismissed so easily would become the only thing standing between her and death. Isabella Sterling commanded boardrooms with the same ruthless efficiency she brought to everything in life. At 34, she ran Meridian Capital, a hedge fund that moved billions through global markets with surgical precision. Her penthouse stretched 40 floors above Manhattan, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city she'd conquered one hostile takeover at a time. This morning, like every morning, she'd eaten breakfast alone at a 12-foot dining table. Her reflection multiplied in polished marble, until she couldn't tell which version was real. 3 years ago, she'd stood in St. Patrick's Cathedral wearing a $40,000 wedding dress, waiting for a man who'd chosen that morning to empty their joint accounts and disappear with his secretary. 200 guests watched her transformation in real time, from bride to abandoned woman to something harder than diamonds. The humiliation crystallized into certainty. Vulnerability was death. Love was luxury she couldn't afford. She'd rebuilt herself into someone who drew first blood, who found weakness like a metal detector found coins. Working-class people reminded her of the girls she'd been: soft, trusting, destroyable. Ethan Carter moved with deliberate stillness, the kind that made air seem more solid. At 36, he carried himself like someone who'd learned that dangerous threats rarely announce themselves. Those scarred hands, which she saw only as proof of manual labor, had once assembled rifles in darkness, had held dying friends, had built his daughter Lily a treehouse that could survive hurricanes. The oil stain wasn't carelessness but kindness. He'd fixed Mrs. Chen's car at dawn so she could make her hospital shift. What Isabella didn't know, Ethan still woke at 3:17 some mornings, his dead squad mate's blood fresh on his hands, though it had been 4 years since Kandahar. He planned Lily's routes to school with military precision, knowing every exit, every safe house. He caught himself analyzing crowds for threats, calculating blast radiuses, noting whose hands were visible. The civilian world wanted him to forget his training. But training had become his skeleton. Remove it, and he'd collapse. He'd chosen fixing engines over private military contracts worth 6 figures, because Lily needed a father who came home every night, not one who might come home in a box. Their mutual friend Chloe had orchestrated this meeting with precision, telling Isabella it was a business contact, telling Ethan it was about classic car restoration. Neither story was true, but both were easier than explaining that sometimes the cure for one wound was exposure to another. Working with your hands, Isabella mused, stirring her $16 latte with deliberate slowness. Must be so liberating. No board meetings. No quarterly projections. No real consequences beyond whether an engine starts. She smiled, sharp enough to cut glass. Though I imagine the intellectual stimulation plateaus quickly. What do you think about under those cars? Grocery lists? Baseball scores? Ethan recognized the interrogation technique, establish superiority, probe for weakness, maintain psychological distance. He noticed how her fingers drummed against the table in patterns, suggesting anxiety medication, how her eyes tracked every cafe movement like she was calculating escape routes. Trauma. Recognized trauma, even wearing designer labels. Yesterday I thought about fluid dynamics, he said evenly, his Oklahoma accent barely there after 20 years. How brake fluid behaves under extreme pressure. How systems designed to stop something can fail catastrophically if one component is compromised. He paused, meeting her gaze. Also thought about my daughter's science project on Venus. The atmospheric pressure there would crush a human in seconds. Isabella's smile flickered. She hadn't expected resistance. How wonderfully arcane. Though I suppose someone has to understand the mundane mechanics. She leaned back, dismissing him with body language. I just closed a $300 million acquisition that will reshape the pharmaceutical industry. The kind of complexity requiring years of education to comprehend. Must be exhausting, Ethan observed. Tone neutral as water. All those lives reduced to numbers on spreadsheets. The words landed like a slap, disguised as a caress. Isabella's eyes flashed dangerously. Lives improved by efficient capital allocation. Though I wouldn't expect someone who fixes cars to understand macroeconomic impact. You're right, Ethan said simply. I just understand machines. They're honest. When something's broken, you can see it, fix it, make it work again. No pretending, no hostile takeovers, no leaving people destroyed for profit margins. While Isabella sharpened her next verbal assault, Ethan's attention had already split. 3 men had entered 4 minutes ago. Movements too coordinated for strangers, too careful for friends. They'd chosen tables that triangulated the room, creating overlapping fields of fire. The one by the window kept touching his ribs, checking a concealed weapon. The leader by the door had the 1,000-yard stare Ethan recognized from mirrors. His body shifted imperceptibly, muscle memory taking over. Calculate distances. 8 feet to nearest hostel, 12 to kitchen, 15 to exit. Inventory weapons, ceramic plates, glass pitcher, the tactical pen he carried from habit. His breathing steadied into combat rhythm, while Isabella continued about Tokyo Ventures and Manhattan power plays. Would you mind switching seats? Ethan interrupted. Voice carrying new authority that made Isabella pause mid-sentence. I need to face the door. She laughed, bright and cutting. How delightfully paranoid. Do you think someone's going to rappel through windows? This is Tribeca. Not Taliban territory. But something in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there, made her comply. As they switched, she added, I suppose this is some macho military thing? Chloe mentioned you served. Couldn't hack civilian life after? The insult barely registered. Ethan was watching the leader's hand disappear inside his jacket. The telltale printing of a shoulder holster visible. The other 2 had stopped pretending to drink coffee. Whatever was about to happen had been decided. His hand found his phone, thumb hovering over emergency call, but he knew it would be too late. These men had the look of desperation mixed with determination, the most dangerous combination. Listen carefully, he said, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. In about 30 seconds, something bad is going to happen. When it does, you go low and left toward the kitchen. Don't ask questions. Don't hesitate. Don't look back. Can you do that? Isabella started to laugh again, but the sound died. His entire demeanor had changed. The mild-mannered mechanic was gone, replaced by something that made her primitive brain scream danger. What are you talking about? The college waitress approaching the 3 men never had a chance. Her tray balanced precariously as she navigated between tables. The universe held its breath. Then she stumbled, maybe over a bag strap, maybe over nothing. The tray crashed down, coffee spreading like blood across marble. The man by the window jumped up, cursing, and his jacket flew open completely. The Glock 19 was clearly visible, black polymer frame unmistakable to anyone who knew what death looked like. Ethan's hand shot across the table, gripping Isabella's wrist hard enough to bruise. Now, the world exploded into chaos. 3 guns appeared simultaneously, their bearers moving with the coordination of men who'd planned this moment in detail. Everyone on the ground. This is a robbery. Nobody moves. Nobody dies. The leader's voice cracked with adrenaline, revealing his age maybe 25, too young for the weight in his eyes. Isabella's mind, that beautiful machine that could process market fluctuations and hostile takeovers, simply stopped. The gun pointed at the ceiling looked impossibly large, impossibly real. Her body wouldn't respond to commands. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, crushed competitors, built an empire from spite and ambition. None of it mattered now. She was 7 years old again, hiding in her closet while her parents screamed downstairs, helpless and small and terrified. Ethan moved before thought, his hand pulling her down and under the table with enough force to send her designer heels skittering across marble. His body positioned itself between her and the gunman, a human shield she hadn't asked for and didn't deserve. Stay down, he commanded. His voice different. Now, not the gentle mechanic or patient father, but something forged in places where orders meant survival. Don't look at them. Don't be memorable. Control your breathing in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Do it now. His own breathing had already shifted, oxygen flooding his system for what was coming. The familiar cocktail of adrenaline and absolute calm washed through him, time dilating the way it always did before violence. He could see everything. The tremor in the youngest gunman's hand suggesting first-time nerves. The wedding ring the leader kept touching like a talisman. The track marks barely visible on the third man's forearm. These weren't professionals. They were desperate men about to make an irreversible mistake. The nearest gunman, the one with track marks, was harassing an elderly couple, yanking the woman's purse hard enough to send her sprawling. Her cry of pain made him laugh, high and manic. "That's right, Grandma. Hand it all over." He was 6 feet away now, close enough that Ethan could smell sour sweat of withdrawal, see pupils contracted to pinpoints. An addict robbing for a fix was unpredictable, but vulnerable reaction times compromised, peripheral vision narrowed. Isabella pressed herself against the floor, feeling cold marble through her silk blouse. She could see Ethan's hand around the water pitcher, fingers testing its weight with the same precision she used evaluating portfolios. There was no hesitation in his movements, no fear, just calculation. She watched him breathe, steady as a metronome, while her own breath came in panicked gasps that made her dizzy. When the addict was close enough, Ethan moved with violence so precise it looked choreographed. The pitcher became a weapon, swinging in an arc that connected with the man's temple with a wet crack. The gunman dropped instantly, weapon clattering away. Ethan was already moving, scooping up the gun with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber in a motion so automatic it looked like breathing. "Kitchen. Move." He hauled Isabella to her feet, half carrying her as bullets shattered the coffee machine they'd been sitting beside moments before. She stumbled, her heels useless, her body not designed for this movement. Without hesitation, Ethan's arm went around her waist, lifting her partially off the ground as he moved them both behind the relative safety of the service counter. Isabella's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. This man she'd dismissed as simple, whom she'd mocked for his blue-collar job, moved like something out of a Jason Bourne film. Every action was economical, purposeful, lethal. When he checked corners, when he moved through space, when he held the weapon, it all spoke of years of training, of muscle memory earned in places where mistakes meant death. 2 hostiles remaining, he said, more to himself than her. Leader at 12 o'clock using the mother as shield. Second shooter flanking left. His free hand found her face, forcing her to look at him. "Isabella, I need you to listen. When I move, you go through that kitchen door. There's an exit to the alley. Run. And don't stop. Understand?" She nodded, unable to speak. Her designer armor was gone, stripped away by terror, leaving only the core of who she was. A woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten they were still made of paper. The leader's voice cut through chaos. "Come out, hero. Come out or I start shooting civilians. You've got 5 seconds. 5. A child's scream pierced the air. Through the service window, Isabella could see the leader had grabbed a little girl, maybe 5 years old, pressing his gun to her temple while her mother sobbed and begged. The girl's face was streaked with tears, her small body shaking so hard it looked like she might break apart. 4. 3. Ethan's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping beneath skin. Isabella saw the war playing out behind his eyes, tactical assessment versus human cost. Save one versus save many. The mathematics of combat that no one should have to calculate. 2. Wait. Ethan called out, already moving. "I'm coming out. Let the girl go." He set the gun on the counter, visible but not abandoned, and stepped out with hands raised. Isabella watched from her hiding spot as he became deliberately vulnerable, offering himself as a target. The leader's gun swung toward him, the little girl momentarily forgotten. "You killed Marcus," the leader said, voice thick with something that might have been grief. "He was my brother. My little brother. And you killed him for what? Money that's insured anyway?" Isabella could see Ethan's face in profile, saw him process this information and recalibrate. "He's not dead," Ethan said, voice steady and sure. "Concussed. Maybe a skull fracture, but alive. I know where to hit. To drop someone without killing them. Your brother needs medical attention, but he'll survive if we end this now." The leader's gun hand trembled. Up close, Isabella could see he was young, maybe 23, with exhaustion that came from carrying too much weight too long. "You don't understand," he said. "They've got my daughter. Said if I don't pay by tonight." His voice cracked. "She's 7. Same age as..." He looked at the girl he was holding, seemed to really see her for the first time. The second shooter, still by the window, shifted nervously. "Tommy, we gotta go. Cops'll be here any second." "Shut up!" Tommy screamed, gun swinging wildly between Ethan and the crowd. "Just shut up! And let me think." Ethan took a small step forward, hands still raised. "Tommy, look at me. I've got a 7-year-old too. Her name's Lily. She likes dinosaurs and soccer and chocolate chip pancakes." Another step. "I know what it's like, to feel like you'd do anything to protect them. But this isn't the way." Isabella watched, transfixed, as Ethan slowly transformed the dynamics of the situation. His voice never rose, never threatened. He was using empathy as a weapon, connection as a strategy. She'd negotiated $100 million deals with less skill than he was showing now. "You don't know anything," Tommy said, but the gun lowered slightly. "You don't know what it's like to owe the wrong people. To watch them send videos of your kid at school, at the park, letting you know they can take her any time. Then let's figure this out together," Ethan said. "But first, let the little girl go. You're not this guy. Tommy, you're a father who got desperate. Don't become something your daughter would be ashamed of." For a moment, the world balanced on a knife's edge. Then Tommy released the girl, who ran sobbing to her mother. The gun dropped to his side, exhaustion winning over adrenaline. I didn't know what else to do." That's when the second shooter acted. Maybe he saw the situation dissolving. Maybe he was just more desperate than Tommy. But his gun swung toward Ethan with lethal intent. Enough talking. Isabella didn't think. She couldn't think. Her body moved on instinct, grabbing the fire extinguisher from the wall and swinging it like her life depended on it, which it probably did. The metal cylinder connected with the shooter's skull, with a sound like a bell being rung. He dropped instantly, the gun firing once into the ceiling, as he fell. The shot seemed to wake Tommy from his trance. He raised his gun again, pointed it at Ethan. Finger on the trigger. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. But I can't go to prison. My daughter." Ethan moved faster than Isabella's eyes could follow. He knocked Tommy's gun hand aside just as it fired, the bullet shattering a window instead of finding flesh. They went down together, rolling across broken glass and spilled coffee. Tommy fought with the strength of desperation, but Ethan fought with the precision of training. A strike to the median nerve made Tommy's hand spasm open. An elbow to the solar plexus drove the air from his lungs. A careful chokehold, held just long enough, sent him into unconsciousness. Ethan rolled away, gasping, his shirt torn and bloody from glass. He looked up to find Isabella standing over him with the fire extinguisher still raised, ready to strike again if needed. Her designer outfit was ruined, her perfect makeup streaked with tears and sweat, but her eyes blazed with something fierce and protective. "I told you to run," he said. "Yeah, well." Her voice shook, but held humor. "I've never been good at following orders. Ask anyone." Sirens finally cut through the air, growing louder by the second. Police burst through doors moments later, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Ethan immediately dropped to his knees, hands visible, making himself non-threatening. He'd been through enough military-police interactions to know that heroes and threats looked identical in chaos. As police sorted through the scene, paramedics swarmed in. One of them, a young woman with gentle hands, insisted on examining Ethan. When she cut away his shirt to check for injuries, Isabella saw the full map of his history written in scar tissue. Bullet wounds, shrapnel marks, burns, each one a moment when he'd chosen to stand between danger and the innocent. Her throat constricted with shame so profound, it felt like drowning. "Sir, we need to get you to the hospital," the paramedic said, indicating the deep gash along his ribs, where Tommy's wild shot had grazed him, deeper than he'd let on. "I'm fine," Ethan protested, but his face had gone pale, adrenaline no longer masking pain. "My daughter Lily. School gets out at 3. I need to. I'll handle it," Isabella said. surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. What school? I'll have her picked up and brought to the hospital. Ethan studied her face. This woman who'd spent 2 hours telling him how insignificant he was, who'd wielded her success like a scalpel to dissect his supposed failures. Why? The question hung between them, demanding honesty. Because, she said slowly, you just bled for strangers. For me, after I. She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the cruelty she'd shown. Please. Let me do this one thing. He gave her the school information and his ex-wife's contact for the pickup list. As paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, Isabella climbed in without asking permission. That night, Isabella stood in her penthouse. But it felt different now, not like a fortress, but like a mausoleum. The city lights below seemed cold, distant, irrelevant. She kept replaying the moment when Ethan had offered himself in exchange for hostages. When he'd talked Tommy down with empathy instead of force. All her money, all her power, had been useless. What had mattered was courage, compassion, the willingness to bleed for others. She walked to her home office, past photos of her with CEOs and politicians, past framed magazine covers, declaring her a woman to watch and a titan of industry. They felt like artifacts from another life. One where she'd believed that success meant being harder than everyone else. That vulnerability was weakness. That people like Ethan were beneath consideration. Her phone buzzed with messages from her executive team, from reporters who'd heard about the incident, from her mother asking if she'd seen the news. She ignored them all. Instead, she pulled up Ethan's number saved under mechanic with casual dismissiveness and stared at it. At the hospital, she'd met Lily. The little girl had Ethan's eyes and his steady presence, asking serious questions about her father's injuries with the composure of someone who'd learned too young that sometimes Dad came home hurt. Isabella had stayed while they talked, watching Ethan transform from warrior to father. His voice softening as he assured Lily that he was okay, that the bad men were gone, that she was safe. Is this the princess lady? Lily had asked, looking at Isabella with curious eyes. Princess lady? Isabella had been confused. Daddy said he was meeting a princess today. Someone who lives in a tower and doesn't come down much. Ethan had flushed slightly. I said she was successful, Lily. You said she was sad. Lily had corrected with brutal honesty of children. You said sometimes people build towers so high they forget how to come down. The memory made Isabella's eyes burn. She'd built her tower so high she couldn't even see the ground anymore. But today, Ethan had pulled her down to earth, shown her what real strength looked like. It wasn't hostile takeovers or crushing competitors. It was a father holding his daughter's hand with scarred fingers. It was offering yourself to save strangers. It was choosing empathy over violence, even when violence would have been justified. The next morning came gray and uncertain. Isabella had barely slept, her mind replaying every moment of the robbery, every word she'd said before it happened. She dressed carefully, jeans and a sweater, clothes she'd had to order because her closet contained only armor. No designer labels, no power suits, just fabric to cover skin that felt too sensitive, too exposed. She found them at the park Ethan had mentioned when giving the school information. He was on a bench, moving stiffly, while Lily played on the swings. His right side was bandaged under his t-shirt, and she could see him wince when he shifted position. But he was there, present for his daughter like he'd promised. Isabella approached slowly, carrying a bag from a bookstore and a coffee tray. Hi, she said, the word feeling inadequate. Ethan looked up, surprise flickering across his features. Isabella, what are you doing here? I wanted to check on you. Both of you. She held out the coffee, black. No sugar, the way she'd seen him drink it. And I brought something for Lily. She pulled out the book. A story about a brave knight who was also a brilliant inventor, I thought. Someone who likes dinosaurs might also like stories about different kinds of strength. Lily ran over, examined the book with that serious expression Isabella was beginning to recognize. The knight is a girl, she observed, pointing at the cover. The strongest knights sometimes are, Isabella said. Lily considered this, then nodded. Like you, with the fire extinguisher. Daddy told me you hit the bad man. That was brave. Isabella's throat tightened. Your dad was the brave one. Daddy's always brave, Lily said matter-of-factly. But he said you were brave too, even though you were scared. He said that's the best kind of brave. Ethan shifted on the bench, making room. Sit, he said simply. Isabella sat, hyper-aware of the space between them, of how different this felt from their disaster of a first date. I owe you an apology, she began. Several, actually. The things I said, the way I acted. You were protecting yourself, Ethan interrupted. I could see it from the beginning. The way you kept checking exits, the way you held your phone like a shield. Something happened to you. Something that made you decide attack was safer than vulnerability. She stared at him. How did you? Same way you probably noticed I fold my napkin in military corners and check every room twice when I enter. Trauma recognizes trauma. The simple truth of it broke something in her. I was supposed to get married 3 years ago. He ran off that morning with everything: money, dignity, faith in people. I rebuilt myself to never need anyone again, to never be weak again, and I came back from Afghanistan with pieces missing, Ethan said quietly. Not physical pieces, those healed, but parts of me that knew how to trust, how to relax, how to believe the world was basically safe. My ex-wife tried to love me back to who I was before. But that person died in Kandahar with my squad mate. All I could do was build something new from what was left. They sat in silence, watching Lily pump her legs on the swing, reaching for the sky with each arc. I don't know how to not be who I've become, Isabella admitted. Today at the office, I caught myself about to humiliate an intern for a minor mistake. It's like muscle memory now. Strike first, maintain distance, never show weakness. It takes practice, Ethan said. Unlearning survival mechanisms when you no longer need them. But Lily helps. Kids don't let you maintain distance. They need all of you, not just the parts you've decided are safe to show. I don't know anything about kids, Isabella said. Nobody does until they have to learn. He paused, then added, That coffee's getting cold. She looked down at the untouched cup in her hands. I don't actually like coffee, she admitted. I drink it because CEOs are supposed to run on caffeine and ambition. He laughed, a real laugh that made him wince and press a hand to his ribs. I don't like it either. Reminds me of deployment: burnt, bitter, necessary but not pleasant. Then why do you drink it? Because that's what normal people do on coffee dates. The absurdity of it. Both of them drinking something they hated to perform normalcy made Isabella laugh too. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The CEO who can't stop attacking, and the soldier who can't stop defending. Maybe that's why Chloe set us up, Ethan suggested. She saw two people who needed to remember there were other ways to be. Lily ran over then, grabbing both their hands. Come, push me on the swings. Both of you. And so they did. Isabella on one side and Ethan on the other, synchronizing their pushes while Lily shrieked with delight. For a moment, Isabella forgot about hostile takeovers and market strategies. Ethan's hand brushed hers as they pushed, and he didn't pull away. Neither did she. I'd like to try again, Isabella said suddenly. The date, I mean. Without guns or robbery, or me being horrible. Ethan looked at her, assessing. I'm not an easy person to be with, he warned. I have nightmares. I check exits compulsively. Sometimes I disappear into my head and can't find my way back for hours. And Lily comes first. Always. I'm not easy either, Isabella countered. I work too much. I have trust issues that need their own zip code. I'll probably say something cruel by accident, because that's my default setting, and I have no idea how to be part of something instead of in charge of it. Sounds like we're perfect for each other, he said dryly. Tuesday? She suggested. Same cafe, apparently they're reopening with upgraded security and free coffee for survivors. You just said you don't like coffee. Then we'll drink tea and pretend it's coffee. We're good at pretending. This time, when he laughed, she noticed how it transformed his face, softening the hypervigilance into something younger. Lighter. Tuesday, he agreed, but I'm still not sitting with my back to the door. I wouldn't expect anything else. Tuesday came unseasonably warm, spring asserting itself against winter's last grip. Isabella arrived early, Having changed outfits only twice this time progress, she thought. The cafe had new windows, reinforced glass, that caught light differently. A security guard nodded at her, and she recognized the exhaustion in his eyes. Another veteran, probably, hired, because he knew what violence looked like before it announced itself. Ethan arrived exactly on time, and when he extended his hand in greeting, she took it properly, feeling the calluses she'd once mocked, understanding now that they were evidence of work that mattered. Fixing things, building things, holding his daughter's hand through life's storms. So, she said as they sat him facing the door, her accepting that this was who he was. Tell me about Lily's mother. The question surprised him, but he answered honestly. Sarah, met her in college, before I knew who I was or what I'd become. She waited through 2 deployments. But the third one broke us. I came back different. Not worse. Just different. Quieter. I'd lost the ability to care about small things. Couldn't pretend that missing a dinner reservation mattered when I'd seen what really mattered. She tried. God, she tried. But you can't love someone back to who they used to be. Do you miss it? Who you used to be? Ethan considered carefully. Sometimes. I miss being able to sleep without checking the locks 3 times. I miss believing that most people are basically good. But that version of me couldn't have protected those people yesterday. Couldn't have talked Tommy down or kept everyone alive. Maybe we become who we need to be, not who we want to be. And Sarah? She's happy now. Married a teacher. Has 2 more kids. He's a good man. Soft in all the ways I'm hard. Better for her. Better for Lily to see that there are different ways to be a man. Isabella found herself telling him about the wedding that wasn't. About standing in that church feeling like she was dissolving. About the moment she decided to become someone who couldn't be left because no one could get close enough to leave. I thought money was armor. Power was a weapon. If I was richer, meaner, more successful than everyone else, I'd be safe. Were you? Safe? I was empty, she admitted, successful and empty. I'd won everything and had nothing. They talked for 3 hours, past coffee and tea, through lunch, into the afternoon slant of light that turned the cafe golden. She learned that he read philosophy to try to understand what he'd done in war. He learned that she secretly watched reality television shows about housewives to remember that everyone was messy, even with money. She discovered his gentleness was a choice, not a default that he was capable of violence, but chose peace every day, every moment. He discovered her cruelty was fear crystallized, that beneath it was someone who'd once believed in love so completely that its betrayal had required a complete transformation to survive. I have to pick up Lily, he said finally, reluctantly. Can I come? The question surprised her as much as him. I mean, if that's okay, I bought her another book. Maybe I could give it to her? The domesticity of it, picking up a child from school, was so foreign to her world of board meetings and billion-dollar decisions, but when Lily saw them both and ran over with her backpack bouncing, when she grabbed Isabella's hand as naturally as she grabbed Ethan's, something in Isabella's chest cracked open. Saturday came gray and drizzly, but Isabella stood on the sideline with other parents, wearing rain boots that cost more than most people's rent, but feeling more real than she had in years. She cheered when Lily kicked the ball mostly in the wrong direction, and laughed when all the kids chased it in a clump. After the game, at the pizza place that smelled like grease and echoed with children's voices, Isabella helped Lily with her juice box, and listened to her explain why T-Rexes were the best dinosaurs. Other parents included them naturally in conversations about school events and birthday parties. That night, after Lily was asleep, they stood in Ethan's small kitchen while he made coffee. Neither of them wanted out of habit and nervousness. The domesticity of it, the cluttered refrigerator covered in Lily's artwork, the dishes drying in the rack, the normalcy made Isabella's chest tight with longing she didn't know how to name. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Be part of something small and real and important. Neither do I, he said. I know how to survive, how to protect, how to compartmentalize. But this? He gestured between them. This terrifies me more than any firefight. Why? Because in combat, the worst thing that happens is you die. Here, the worst thing is Lily gets attached and then gets hurt, or I let you in, and you realize I'm too damaged Too difficult. Too much work. Isabella set down her untouched coffee and crossed to him. What if I'm just as damaged? What if we're both too much work? What if that makes us perfect for each other, because we understand the cost of rebuilding? He looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd walked into his life with cruelty and designer shoes, who'd swung a fire extinguisher at an armed man, who was learning to be soft again despite every instinct screaming against it. This could go badly, he warned. Everything could go badly. But today was good. He kissed her then, careful of his still healing ribs, mindful of her tendency to flight. It was gentle and questioning. Nothing like the passion she'd known before. No conquering, no claiming, just connection, just possibility. 3 months became 6. Isabella learned the rhythm of their life: early mornings, getting Lily ready for school, Ethan's nightmares that meant some nights he'd disappear into the garage to rebuild an engine until his hands stopped shaking, soccer games where she cheered louder than anyone. She started working from Ethan's apartment sometimes, her laptop looking absurd on his scratched kitchen table, taking conference calls while Lily colored beside her. It wasn't easy. She'd slip sometimes, make a cutting remark that would have devastated a business rival, but wounded Ethan in ways that took days to heal. He'd disappear into himself sometimes, present but unreachable, fighting battles in countries she'd never seen. But there were moments of grace too, when Ethan taught her to change oil, his hands over hers, showing her how to feel when something was wrong by touch alone. When Isabella taught Lily about compound interest using her piggy bank, making math magical. The house they found was in Brooklyn, close enough to Isabella's work but far enough to feel removed from that world. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a yard that needed work, a garage that made Ethan's eyes light up. Moving day came in spring, a year after that violent first date. Lily directed traffic with the seriousness of a general, ensuring her dinosaurs were properly positioned in her new purple room. That evening, in their new home with boxes still everywhere and Lily asleep upstairs, Isabella found Ethan on the back porch, staring at stars barely visible through the city's glow. "Regrets?" she asked, settling beside him. "Number. Just thinking about paths. How I needed to go through hell to find this. How you needed to build those walls, to learn to tear them down. How a violent robbery became our origin story. We should probably tell people we met at a coffee shop," Isabella suggested. "Leave out the guns and existential crises. Lily won't let us. She's already told her entire class about how you're a princess who fought bad guys with a fire extinguisher." Isabella laughed, then grew serious. "I almost lost this. Almost let my fear and prejudice rob me of this life. If you hadn't been patient, if you hadn't seen through the armor." "We saved each other," Ethan said simply. "You reminded me there's life beyond survival. I reminded you there's strength beyond conquest." 5 years after that first date, Isabella stood in their garage, hands covered in grease, helping Ethan rebuild an engine while Lily did homework at the workbench. Her designer clothes hung in the closet, worn to board meetings, where she was still fierce but no longer cruel. She'd learned the difference between strength and hardness, between success and worth. Ethan still checked the locks, still preferred seats facing doors, still disappeared sometimes into nightmares she couldn't follow. But he also laughed more, slept better, had learned to trust that good things could last if you were willing to fight for them differently than you'd fought before. "Mom," Lily said she'd started calling Isabella that 2 years ago. "Naturally, without discussion, can you help with this math?" "After we finish this," Isabella said, hands deep in machinery she was beginning to understand. "Your dad's teaching me about combustion." This was their life now. Ordinary and extraordinary, built on a foundation of coffee they didn't drink, violence they'd survived, and the radical act of choosing to trust after trust had been broken. They'd learned that love wasn't the absence of damage but the presence of grace, that families weren't born but built, that sometimes the worst first date could become the best life if you were brave enough to try again. And in their small corner of Brooklyn, in a house that needed constant repair, with a purple room and a garage that smelled of motor oil and possibility, they'd found something worth more than all of Isabella's millions or all of Ethan's medals. They'd found home.